Welcome to Python with Andrew, and today we're going to have a quick look at the while loop as opposed to the for loop that we've been looking at so far. We're going to look at the second method in Python that we can do repetition, things over and over and over again. And the while loop is slightly different to the for loop, as we'll see when we jump over to Visual Studio Code and have a look there. So the while loop is what I call an unbounded loop. In other words, it could go on forever. The for loop was a bounded loop. We would do it a number of times, 1 to 10, or for a number in a list. The while loop we can do until a condition changes or until a condition is false. So a while loop is sort of like bigger than a for loop. Pretty well every for loop could be expressed as a while loop, but you can't do it the other way around easily. So let's have a look at the basic structure. All right, well, excuse my spelling there, but the while we have a condition is, while it's true, we'll keep doing these statements and go round and round and round in repetition. And here's an interesting example. I've set my variable I to 0, and while I is less than 3, I'm going to go in the loop I, and then I'm going to increment I again. So if we look at that, if I save that and run that, in the loop 0, 1, 2. And this looks very similar to in range 3 that we were looking at before. Print. Right, so that's exactly the same as what I've got there. And you can see that the answers are exactly the same. The while loop is slightly different. For this particular example, you would say the for loop looks easier, looks better, but the while loop has more opportunity to use it in many different ways. So let's go back up to the while loop here. I'm going to delete this now. And let's look. First of all, we need some sort of initial condition. In this loop, I'm using a counter, 0, 1, 2, 3. So I need to set that to an initial condition. If I don't set this variable, for example there, the reality is I'll get an error because I have not set the variable up front. So I need to set the initial condition. That's the first thing we need to remember. And the second thing is that we have a condition. I is less than 3. I is less than or equal to 3. I is in this list. I is this, I is that. We've got some sort of condition. And while that condition is true, we'll do all the statements. In this case, we've got the print statement as we've had before. And then we've got what's really critical is a way of, if you like, incrementing the counter so that sooner or later the counter or this condition will become false. If I don't have this in there, for example, if I comment that out, I should have a loop that will go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Okay, and that will never stop. So let me try and stop that. And clear that. So I better put that in there. Stop that. And let me run it again. Oops. Save it and then run it again. Clear it and run again. Back to that. Phew. You don't want to miss out doing the change or the counter. Otherwise, you'll see your programming running forever. So we must have something that increments this counter. Or more generically, or more generally, we must have a way of getting that I so that this condition eventually becomes false. So for example, we might have, and we'll explore this in a later tutorial, while the answer is not stop. And then we might do not stop. And then we might do some activities, statements, and so on. Sooner or later, we must change the answer equals stop. Okay. Maybe we ask the person for input, and maybe we're asking directions, and they might say north, south, east, west, north, west, south, west. And then eventually they say stop. And when they say stop, we will stop this loop. All right. So it doesn't have to be a counter, but as long as this condition will eventually change to false, we need that. Otherwise, it goes over and over and over and over and over again. So we'll explore a more complex use of the while loop. At this point, it's really important that you look at this basic structure. Number one, set the counter to 0. Number 2, have a condition. And number 3, and most importantly, change the variable so that the condition eventually becomes false. So practice that. And when we come back, we'll look at some more complex uses of the while loop. Again, if you like what you're watching, please subscribe to Python with Andrew, and please share this with your friends. Have a good day now.